There's a transition that most anarchists go through where they start out believing what they're taught since birth, that they are the government and the government represents them. And then slowly over time, you start to learn more and more of the truth, that it is its own beast that serves its own ends, and well, maybe not all, but a lot of those very dark, nefarious conspiracy theories that you see and hear in movies and books and rumors, a lot of them are real. And our guest today has some direct experience with some of the darker sides of what happens when you fuck with the government's money. Let's get into it.
From Dallas, Texas, this is Anarchast.
Greetings, eyeballs. Welcome back to Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I will be Patrick Smith. Today's guest is father, husband, financial professional, technologist, inventor, consultant to multi-billion-dollar companies, pioneer of the world's first crypto securities protocol, and victim of a coordinated assault by the Five Eyes spy network. Welcome to the show, Chris Horlacher. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me on, Pat, and thanks for that really wonderful introduction.
Hey, man, we have a lot to talk about, and I don't want to say a lot in common because I think our careers have been on different paths, but mine are starting to link up with some of yours, and I'm a little nervous about what I'm getting myself into and the state of things. So, I think, well, excuse me. The first question I have to ask you, I know you've been on Anarchast twice before, but this is my first time having the pleasure of talking with you. I would like to ask, how did you become an anarchist, if we could hear your story?
It's a long story, but I think we have a little time. So I guess I grew up never really seeing much of a point to government. Even after I got old enough to vote, I think I only ever participated actually in 2 elections where I cast my vote. But pretty quickly, I just decided this was stupid. Like, democracy clearly didn't work. All the wrong people were always getting into power, and they never did anything of any use to people. So pretty quickly, I just started ignoring it and doing my own thing. Never really thought much about it until about 2007, when a guy named Ron Paul starts showing up on television. And the points he was making and the wisdom he elucidated really resonated with the core fiber of my being. And I'd never heard of anybody talk like this before, certainly nobody in Canada. And I was just completely taken by the way he presented his philosophy. And it was so unique to hear such clear thinking and consistent messaging coming from a politician. He wasn't flip-flopping with each and every issue and saying one thing one year and the opposite thing the next year, as I had seen from everybody my whole life. And then he starts talking about where he got his philosophy from, which was the Mises Institute and Austrian economics. So in around that same time, I started delving into Ludwig von Mises, Murray Rothbard, Friedrich Hayek, Karl Menger, the whole cadre of Austrian economics. And I had just recently finished university. And so for about 4 or 5 years, it was one book after the other book. It was, the theory of money and credit, followed by man, economy, and state. And then, the next one and the next one, and then throw in a little Ayn Rand in there. And just to make sure I'm on the right track, throw in a few communists and socialists in there, just to make sure these guys are really that dumb. And sure enough, they are. I mean, I read the Communist Manifesto, and just going through it, I just thought to myself, like, if anybody tried publishing something like this today, it would get banned as hate literature. Because if you just take the bourgeoisie and the proletariat and replace that with the Jews and everyone else, you're fucked. Like, you're going to get run out of society. But Marx picked the right dialectic and pitched it, and hundreds of millions, billions of people bought it, and we're living in the aftermath of their spell.
Yeah.
And so, as you start learning Austrian economics, you start to be able to make accurate ones about the future. And in I think it was 2009, I remember it very clearly. I had just met my wife, and we're in the car, we're driving over the Skyway Bridge in Hamilton, and I had been going around doing talks at I think it was a monthly meetup that was being put on by the Canadian Mises Institute, which I eventually became the treasurer and director of. And we're sitting in the car, we're driving along, and she's asking me, Chris, why do you do this? And I said to her, at some point in the future, maybe in about 10 years, 5 years to 10 years, but there is going to come a time where the economy is going to be in ruins. You will not be able to leave the country, and there will probably be a mass genocide. And here we are today. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And I'm not so and we're still waiting on the third one. And so, I mean, the last 10 years has really borne out that philosophy and kind of solidified all of this in my mind, that the state is the enemy of humanity. They have declared war on every man, woman, and child in existence.
In their name, on their behalf, to protect them. Yes.
To protect you, we will imprison you. We will inject you with drugs that we have not tested.
We must own you to keep you safe.
Yes, exactly. It's, the mantra of every abusive parent or authority figure you have imagined. I have to do this to you to keep you safe. And, we're going to put you in a box over there. We're going to take away your choices, and you'll be safe. You'll be miserable, but, you'll be safe because, the cult of safety is now ruling the world. And it doesn't matter how dangerous their solutions are, as long as they think it is for some sort of greater good. That, the cost benefit analysis, which as a professional cost benefit analyzer, they're shit. Like, they have no idea how to do that. So
sure.
Yeah, I guess, I think, every person in the core fiber of their being, and the soul of humanity, is demanding freedom. Always throughout history. We have writings going back thousands and thousands of years talking about the rebellious nature of man. And we are not supposed to be existing under these omniscient, omnipresent states that get to do whatever they want for whatever reason they can cook up that is going to fly on the 7 p.m. news. And so that's been kind of my journey through anarchy. And, it's taken me out of my home country, and I am now living in Mexico and loving it.
Well, let me just ask the question. Why did you move to Mexico?
Well, also in 2009, I met an interesting character by the name of Jeff Berwick, and he had me on Anarchast as one of his very first guests. And
some people around here might have heard of him. Yeah. Yeah, I think a few. And so, he was just starting the Dollar Vigilante. I was working with Redmond Weisenberger trying to get the Mises Institute of Canada off the ground. And so we started collaborating on things. And so he would syndicate some of my articles about certain things. I was writing a lot about the Canadian housing market at the time because the US had just had
their bubble burst. And then I started digging through all of the financials of Canada's mortgage insurance company and seeing that they were as leveraged as Bear Stearns was at the time. They may have read what I started writing about them, because pretty quickly in the years that followed, they had ratcheted down significantly the amount of leverage that they were back into a relatively safe zone. So they didn't blow up then. They've managed to sustain this bubble now up until today. But again, the wheels are starting to fall apart. But Jeff had me come down to Acapulco, I think in 2011, and that was my very first trip down here, and we fell in love with the city. After Anarchapulco started, we missed the first one, came to the following three, and then COVID hit, and so we missed one or two Anarchapulcos, and then I was back last year, and I'll be speaking at this one again.
How long have you lived in Mexico?
I escaped Canada in 2021, so just a little about a year and a half at this point now.
So
interesting story.
Long enough to start seeing the good with the bad. How would you say? Are you happy with your move? What's it like?
Oh, absolutely. It's very different. Things are done very differently around here. The culture is different, and in a lot of ways, it's better. People are a lot friendlier and eager to help, but on the flip side, you also have other people who will say anything to get some money out of you, so you also have to worry about that. The hustle in Acapulco is legendary, so just be aware. But certainly the food is fantastic, the scenery is gorgeous, the weather is, you couldn't ask for better weather. I mean, we just got into the dry season here, so it's basically 30 degrees Celsius without a cloud in the sky for 6 months now.
I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, I'll see you there soon for the event this year.
Oh, that's great.
Cool. Okay, so I would like to dig into your story. You sent me a document that you've written. I'm going to get it in the description of this video. If it's not already there, I apologize if it's not. But it tells your story, and it's a riveting story. Kind of terrifying for those that don't expect it. For the blue pillars, the people that still think, for the most part, the government tries to do good and isn't nefarious and doesn't have machinations. Thinks the deep state is a mystery. I kind of want to get into that and open those eyes if there's anybody that still watch this channel that don't already recognize those things. So can you start with the company that you were trying to create and what you were trying to do with that?
Yeah. So in the early days of Bitcoin, I think maybe around 2013, 2014, I got thinking about using the protocol and enhancing it, because Bitcoin was a mono asset blockchain. Essentially, that's kind of the technical term we invented for it, because it's only cash. The only asset on Bitcoin is Bitcoin. So realizing as I did that the securities markets work very similar to the banking industry. The same technology that was causing havoc in the banking industry now and completely upturning a centuries-old business model could do exactly the same thing in the securities industry. And my background at the time was as the CFO of a stock brokerage. And so I knew the industry and what was under its hood and how all of the nuts and bolts went together and what each part did. And so I designed a system that was very targeted towards displacing two entities in particular, called transfer agents and central depositories. And so a central depository is just a warehouse where all of the stock certificates are deposited. Kind of like a central bank, in the sense that a central bank has all of the accounts of all of its member banks. And so a central depository has all of the accounts of the stockbrokers and pension funds, hedge funds, et cetera, et cetera. Transfer agents act as a securities clearinghouse. They also do bookkeeping. They do communications routing as well. So when a company sends out its annual general meeting notices, or if they have a shareholder resolution that they need people to vote on, they handle all of the mail. So, and I've been to their buildings, and it's a bunch of accountants in a big giant mail room and trucks of mail coming and going. This whole system was set up in the late 70s, 80s during a time called the paper blizzard. And what had happened was, post-war economy, Americans are getting wealthier, all this money is being built up, and it's all getting dumped into the stock market. And everybody and their uncle is starting to trade stocks. And so the sheer volume of paperwork that was just flying around Wall Street, that carried by bicycle courier, was literally choking the industry to death. And so what they did is they did two things. One was centralization, and that's where your central depositories come from. And then the other part of that was dematerialization. And that was essentially the digitization of securities. And so that had already happened in the 1980s. So the industry was primed for blockchain because they already wanted everything to be digital. And so the thing is that as interesting as this
let me ask some layman questions just to kind of clarify what's going on. So like when we're talking about securities, we're talking about like things like stocks. And so if a company wants to go public and list their stocks on an exchange, they prior had to create a bunch of paper that were the stocks and then put those paper.
Oh, they still do. They still do. So the way it works today is, let's say I want to, I got a company in Silicon Valley and I'm going to list on NASDAQ. What happens, behind the scenes is that company writes a single stock certificate called a master certificate. And let's say this master certificate is 1 billion shares. Those billion shares have to be in the name of someone, and that name that is written on the certificate is Seed and Company, CEDE. And that company is a subsidiary of DTCC, which is the Depository and Transfer Corporation. And so the DTCC is kind of a fused depository and transfer agent. And so they are the legal owner of all of the securities of that company. And the people who have looked into this, they are actually the legally registered owner of over 90% of all of the publicly registered companies in the United States.
I'm assuming like owner is like only a practicality because the people that own them or buy them on the stock market would still have the controlling rights, the voting rights.
Exactly. So they're the legal owner, but then we have something called a beneficial owner. So through a series of I guess assignments, the ultimate beneficial owner, is the person with his brokerage account, and they will just see numbers on a computer screen or on a statement that says you have 50 shares of Apple or whatnot. But behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of liabilities and receivables between all of these companies that eventually winds up at you, the investor. There is another industry that is set up this way, which is the banking industry. When you deposit money into the bank, that cash is no longer yours. It's the bank's. And then what do? They lend it out to someone else who puts it in another bank, who lends it back out and puts it in another bank, and in and out and in and out and in and out it goes. And we have this daisy chain of assets and liabilities all leading back to the ultimate beneficial owners, from the ultimate beneficial owners all the way back to the issuer. In the case of money, these are the central banks. In the case of securities, these are corporations. And so the same system that can disintermediate banks can also disintermediate the securities industry. And so that was the seed of the idea that became Equibit. And I eventually, gathered together my core team and the rest of my co-founders, and we created the company and started going at it in about 2016. raised a little money in a private placement, hired some developers, and then really got to work. And things started really kind of moving organically from there. Every time we hit a new milestone, we
couple
raise
detail,
a little bit more money.
So, like, does each exchange have one of these intermediaries, or is there competition between multiple? Like, does NASDAQ have one company that holds all of their securities in this way? And so...
Not exactly. So the exchanges themselves don't own anything. The exchanges are a processing facility, I guess is the best way of saying it. They run a book. And so the legal owner of the stocks never changes. It's always Seed & Co. And what happens is the exchange will match buys with sells, and then it will batch all of the executed transactions it did in a day, and that gets sent to the transfer agent. And then the transfer agent will take all of that activity, net it together, and then determine how many securities need to go to be moved from one brokerage's account to another brokerage's account.
So balancing it all out. Okay.
Yeah. So they figure out what the net settlement is between the brokers, and then the brokers in their own set of books, they know who the ultimate beneficial owner is, which are their clients. So it's a multi-layered cake of risk.
And so you were trying to compete with them for existing normal securities or for crypto securities? Or both?
Well, the idea was that issuers, rather than use that system, write a master certificate and hire a transfer agent to do all of the bookkeeping and handle all of your investor relations, rather than all of that, you would just download a free app and go.
Right. Okay.
So, and then you're at that point, your only fees are the network transaction fees, which would be very small compared to what some of these companies are paying. The listing fees to get onto an exchange and stay on an exchange, because they charge you annually, are usually calculated as a percentage of your market cap. So the bigger you get, the more expensive it is to stay on a stock exchange.
Okay.
And the brokers are also paying fees. Everybody pays fees to the transfer agents because they're your bookkeeper. And it costs the industry upwards of about $10 billion a year to maintain that system.
Wow. Okay.
And so our product, Equibit, was designed to completely blow that out of the water. And in 2018, we demonstrated that not only did we succeed at that, but we had built a wallet that could do cross-chain atomic swaps without ever leaving the wallet. So the wallet itself looked and functioned very much like a trading screen. You would be able to scan the network for all the available securities that had been posted there. You would be able to see the order book on that security and then interact with the orders. And basically you would open up what's called a deal room, and in a private trade, that's what it's called. The deal room is where the buyer and seller come together and negotiate their price and then do the exchange. And so this was all happening with the wallet. The wallet would find other wallets out on the network that had what you were looking for and would engage with them in a secure communications channel. You would exchange keys, addresses, securities in an atomic swap, and you're done. In a few clicks, you could buy a security for Equibits, sell a security for Equibits, or any other cryptocurrency, because again, we could do cross-chain atomic swaps. So the liquidity was going to come. The liquidity was going to come from Bitcoin. So right off the get-go, we had access to tens of billions of dollars of capital that was just sitting around in people's wallets doing nothing. because in those days, Bitcoin was not anywhere near as active as it is now. A lot of Bitcoin that has just been lying fallow for years and years and years is starting to churn again, and you can see the transaction volume in Bitcoin, and it's incredible what has happened just in the last few years.
So did you ever get any, I'm going to call them legacy securities, like non-cryptocurrency type securities that were on the Equibit network, and were you linked in with any exchanges, or had it not gotten to that point yet?
It hadn't gotten to that point yet, but we were in discussions with several stock exchanges that were going to use Equibit as their transfer agent, essentially. Because a stock exchange, people would be able to, because for a stock exchange to operate on the Equibit network, the business model is exactly the same as a crypto exchange. People would just deposit their securities into the exchange, and then away they go. And so exchanges were not our competition, because there was no way an atomic swap is going to compete with a matching engine.
Right. Okay.
It's just not fast enough. Like a stock exchange can execute millions of trades per second. An atomic swap, you might get one through in a few minutes. So, I mean, we're not replacing stock exchanges, but for the private markets, for the over-the-counter markets, this was a death blow to the legacy actors in that market, which is actually about 10 times bigger than the public stock exchanges. There's only about 10,000 companies worldwide listed on public stock exchanges. And in actuality, there are hundreds of thousands of companies out there whose securities are not even listed on a stock exchange. You can't log into your Scottrade account and buy these companies. You have to find what's called an exempt market dealer who basically works over the phone through a book called the Pink Sheets, which is essentially the Pink Sheets is the order book of the private markets. It's a book. It's a literal book printed on pink paper. and it has it's just a list of all of the buyers and all of the sellers of a particular security and their broker's phone number.
And so your app might have allowed all these smaller companies to list themselves on the big exchanges without going through the expense of the middlemen? Is that what am I understanding that right?
The smaller companies, so listing on a public stock exchange can add a lot of credibility to a company, because, hey, we're on a public stock exchange, so we have to file quarterly earnings reports. We have to get audited. And so that can add a lot of credibility to a company. It also allows them to access a lot more liquidity a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Now, that second point is chipped away by Equibit because it's very easy to find buyers and sellers. It's very liquid. It would have been the most liquid over-the-counter securities market there is in very short order. And so it was possible, and we were certainly aware that there would be companies that would delist from the stock exchanges. And these are the thinly traded companies that may only have a few trades a week go through. They don't need to be on a stock exchange. And the only reason they're there is so that they can access the liquidity.
So there was some level of competition with the stock exchanges, right? Like, at least for the little guys.
Yeah, but I think it would have been a net positive for them anyway, because maybe a few other companies might have dropped off of the listings, but in what they would save would more than offset any loss of revenue. But the transfer agents themselves were going to be completely obliterated by Equibit, because they really didn't have any ability to compete with it. And so I've mentioned DTCC, but there's a few other big ones out there. Broadridge is a really big one. Euroclear basically handles all of the transfer agent processes throughout all of Europe. And another big one is ComputerShare. ComputerShare is very big in Canada and Australia. It's actually an Australian company. And they're somewhat in the United States, but the United States is pretty much completely dominated by DTCC.
Okay. All right. So in what way was this a threat to the state or the government? I'm asking the obvious question, but I think it bears the details.
Well, it would take a lot of money out of the pockets of very entrenched and very influential players in the financial industry. And I think we're all aware of how powerful those interests are and the kind of leverage they have over state institutions. We also have
they are the people that the governments work for, I think is the way.
Exactly.
That's how I would class it. Yeah.
Yeah. We also have the phenomenon of financial surveillance. And that's your debit cards, your credit cards, your brokerage accounts, your pension funds, et cetera, AML, KYC. If you have money and you want to use a third party, then they want everything on you. And they're going to check to see if you're on a terrorist watch list. You're going to get plugged into a database. Their database is probably backdoored by the CIA, so they can watch everyone's transactions. Who's buying what? Who's
probably not even backdoored.
Where is it going?
Probably front door.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, exactly. Because it's all regulated, and the financial industry lives in. I mean, most of the financial industry. I should say the whole financial industry. Certainly, the people at the very top are not worried at all about what the state is going to do because they're going to be insulated. I don't think Larry Fink worries about what regulations he's going to have to deal with, seeing as how he controls all of the bailout money. And so they use the financial system as a surveillance mechanism just as much as they use the internet and telephones.
And control through freezing accounts when you're a bad enough individual of some kind. There's always the threat.
or you're just born in the wrong country, as we've seen lately for Russians.
Yeah. Okay. So at this point in the story, I think like the closest tie to my life I see in this is several years ago. Back when no one was making alternative social media companies, I started working on an encryption product for Facebook. And what it would do is it would allow anyone to install a browser extension that would allow you to PGP encrypt your Facebook posts, such that only certain people that you wanted to see the contents could, including like Facebook couldn't even see it. And so this obviously really upset Facebook because they, monetize the content of your posts. But I never really got any pushback or threats or anything spooky out of any of that. It was mainly a threat of a lawsuit for, developing something that used their website in a way that they didn't like. But at the time, I didn't really know that something like that, applying cryptography to normal platforms, because I thought at the time that like starting my own social network that competed with Facebook was not a wise move, just because the network effect that Facebook already has going for it is so strong. It's going to be very difficult to bootstrap something from the ground up. And so I figured, okay, well, we'll just use their network and apply a layer of encryption on top of it to make it private and to protect it, protect ourselves while using those networks and leveraging their network effects. I didn't know at the time, how that like the FBI literally had an office in Facebook's, data center where they're front doored, as I like to say. They were front doored into Facebook's data, and that posed a blockage to their ability to spy on people. And then I guess fast forward to later, and then we were starting Float, and I'm interviewing the developers at the Float social network, and I'm pointing out, hey, I've heard stories. This is a real thing where I heard stories from a Telegram, the communication app called Telegram. Some of the developers were harassed over the course of several years with offers of six figures dollar amounts to collude with the U.S. government to provide intel and data from inside the Telegram app. And so I'm interviewing these devs, and I'm like freaking about, like, hey, this might happen. What do you think about it? How would you react if you were, offered large sum of money to, compromise our back end security and stuff like that? And so I'm really just kind of starting to get the outside feeling that we all need to treat the government as the primary threat in the threat model. Like, I don't think I'm exaggerating, and I don't think I'm being too nut jobby when I say that the U.S. government is the largest threat to your privacy, cybersecurity, and maybe even just general life safety in the world. And so I was trying to architect the back end such that it would be resilient to that, and it's a monstrously large task. It's basically the infinite threat model. Like, they are always at the top of any threat model that you build when you're trying to construct a product or a project or anything technological. The ultimate threat is always an actor with the unlimited resources that is a major government, especially probably the largest eye in the five eyes. And I guess, so all that is just a kind of intro to you. Okay. What was your mindset when you were getting started with this? Were you even thinking about any of that? Or were you just, sort of enjoying the challenge and the thrill of a startup that had the potential to sort of upend an industry and make you a ton of money? And how did that change over time? How did it go for you?
Well, we were cautiously optimistic. We did, we were aware that this was going to ruffle some feathers, but we expected that it was going to be, coming through the press, and they were just going to try and, basically cast aspersions about our system and just scare their clients away from using it. So that was kind of what we thought we were in for. And that's what we were prepared for. And so we did make our overtures to the regulators, and the regulators essentially entrapped us. They put on a false show to make us think that they were favorable towards what we were doing, because, the way we pitched it to them is that it was transparent. You could monitor this network in real time. You didn't need anybody to submit reports. We could build you an app. We could even put some AI in it that would flag transactions for you to look at, that maybe this is, maybe somebody, is doing some illegal insider trading and whatnot. It would be actually quite a bit easier for them to do that kind of enforcement on an open and transparent network. And they literally told us, keep going. We like this, and we're taking a hands-off approach to the entire industry. But within about 4 months of them telling us that, they were down our throats and on our backs and just trying to rip the company to shreds, with a whole bunch of quasi-enforcement actions, actual enforcement actions, gag orders. Like, I wasn't even talk to people in the company about what the OSC was doing to us as it's happening, because of the gag orders. And another reason why I left Canada, I don't have to worry about gag orders in another country. So that's nice. But so the behavior from the Ontario Securities Commission, who is now famous for their belligerence towards the crypto market, it was really put on full display in their dealings with us. And we have them on the record, just out and out lying to us. They began enforcement procedures without even looking at our own legal. They didn't even look at the terms and conditions of the pre-mine sale that we were doing. They just said that they got an anonymous tip from someone that we were raising money, and they just decided, just because you were raising money, it had to be illegally, and we're going to shut this down, and blah 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 blah.
An anonymous tip. I'm sure it was very anonymous.
Yeah, an anonymous tip.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You know, like all of the anonymous tips that they were getting about BitConnect that they did absolutely nothing about. And then months after the thing completely implodes, they issue an investment advisory saying not to put money in BitConnect after it had already collapsed. So bravo, OSC. And but we did push back very strongly, and we were lawyered up with one of the top securities law firms in the country named Davies, Ward, Phillips, and Weinberg, and fantastic lawyers. Anybody in Canada wants to do anything involving securities, that's where you go. But we have them on the record now telling us to finish the pre-mine sale, which we did, and then they turned around and launched an enforcement action against us for doing the pre-mine sale. So just lying and lying and lying, and the strategy was basically just to run us down, wear us out, drain the company's treasury, and unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. The legal of standing up to this was hundreds of thousands, and eventually we resolved to relocate the company to Switzerland because Ontario at this point had gone from, oh, we're taking a hands-off approach to this industry to, if you want to do anything in this industry, or come to our doors and bend over and let us see everything. So the complete Jekyll and Hyde of the OSC, that was the end of Canada for the company, and we resolved to pack up and go to Switzerland.
This is the second or maybe third time I've heard this story where you proactively, trying to be the good citizen, go to the government, say, here's what we want to do. We haven't done it yet. Here's what we want to do. We want your approval. We want your sign off. Tell us what you don't like or what you do like or what we need to change. The government says, oh, no, you're good. You're good. You're fine. And then so you go and do it. You invest the money, the resources, and the time creating the thing. And then suddenly they completely 180 and they're like, oh, look at these criminals doing this criminal stuff. Mm-hmm. Get them. The other time I heard this was we interviewed somebody on this channel a while back. I can't remember his name now. I'm terrible. He had a company that was sounding pretty successful where they were selling tickets to fly people to space or something like that. And they went to the government proactively, got permission, got approval before they did anything. And then they went and spent, all the money, made all the commitments. And then the government said, oh, no, you can't do that. And not only destroyed the company, but, obviously the financial repercussions and the criminal repercussions that were laid out. This is an MO. This is a serious. So like, if the government can effectively lie to you and tell you that you're fine and, give you the green light on something and then face absolutely no repercussions or penalties when you go and do the thing they said you could do, when they persecute you for it, I think it's just, I think it lays bare this facade of some kind of justice system. Like it's a gaslighting, manipulative punishment system is what it actually is. See? And there's so many examples.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what is the justice system? The justice system is a crazy narcissist in a black robe with a magic hammer sitting on a throne. That's the justice system.
Yeah. Black dress fetishists. So you moved the company to Switzerland. Why Switzerland?
Well, Switzerland was kind of the safe haven for crypto companies. A lot of companies had gone there. Ethereum, who, I was Ethereum founders because they were all from Canada for the most part. Vitalik Buterin, Anthony Durio. And I was heavily involved in Decentral. I helped Anthony set that up, as well as the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada, which became, I think, the Blockchain Association of Canada now. I even spearheaded a letter to all of the finance ministers across Canada to basically, rein in your dogs because they're loose in the hen house and they're destroying everything. But nobody responded to that letter. Nobody did anything. And so now there is no crypto industry in Canada. None. there are a few really crappy crypto exchanges that are all run by the big banks.
Mm.
And that's it. And if you ask me, Quadriga probably did not play out the way the media said. I don't think that guy was stealing funds, because if he was, he certainly had a lot of opportunity to steal a lot of money from me. But he always showed up with what I asked of him, and I think he was probably murdered while he was out in India trying to be a good Samaritan.
Hold on. I missed something. We went from zero to murder. What? Wait, who is this? Who are we talking about?
Well, this is the Quadriga CX CEO.
Okay.
So he goes to India to help work on some orphanages or something like that, and then he suddenly just winds up dead under very mysterious circumstances. And because he managed all of the keys to the crypto wallet of Quadriga, now everybody has lost all of their crypto, and we're talking like hundreds of millions of crypto. And so some people dug into his past, found out he was involved in some scammy stuff when he was a teenager, and so they said, oh well, look, he was involved in some shady stuff as a kid, so all of Quadriga was bullshit. And probably not. The banks were definitely giving him a hard time with fund movements, and they were locking up accounts for no reason on him. And so, but at any rate, it's just one more dead body in the crypto industry. I mean, the MakerDAO founder, he was just found dead like less than 24 hours after posting to Twitter, hey, I think somebody's going to kill me. So, this is the crypto industry, and I think it bears repeating to a lot of people that this is a dangerous space to be in. It is saturated with criminals of the worst kinds, government agents. And they're not there.
I see what you did there.
They will kill you. They will kill you, and they will get away with it.
Great Wolf over on Odysee viewer says that we should also mention Odysee and Jeremy Kauffman going through the same thing with SEC. Yeah, I was going to bring up. Yeah, so it's actually LBRY.
The LBRY.
It's LBRY, not
LBRY.
Odysee. Yeah, LBRY is the blockchain company that backs Odysee. Odysee is sort of like a separate company that serves as a fancy, very user-friendly front end for the LBRY network. Jeremy remained as the CEO of LBRY and fought the SEC when they came for him, declaring, and I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say I remember the same story that you described coming from Jeremy and LBRY, where they kind of went to the government and said, this is what we're going to do. Before they did it, they kind of got either greenlit or just, dismissed. They went and did it, and then they came back and got punished, just like you're talking. I could be wrong on that, but I want to say that's what I heard happen. And, they had
their situation was very similar. And I look at the arguments the SEC used in the lawsuits, and it's the same crap arguments I saw coming from the OSC that make absolutely no sense. You could apply those same arguments to any collectible. You could apply those arguments to gold coins, to real estate, to rare cars, anything that anybody can buy and sell for a profit. You could apply that argument to and declare a security. So, the Pacific coin test or the Howey test, it's crap. And there's a lot of people out there who have been calling it crap for years. And that's why, of course, the regulators defend it so vociferously, is because that is their magic deeming wand that they just get to go anywhere they feel like going and slap the label of security on anything that anybody trades for money.
And I don't know what the most recent news out of LBRY is. Last I heard, they were basically financially devastated by not only the very expensive defense, court defense, paying the lawyers, but then they lost, so they were levied a bunch of fines that just basically wiped them out.
Yeah, which of course, I mean, the money's already been spent, I imagine. So when a company has to give back the money it's raised, that's called disgorgement, and it's not going to happen. And Library is a successful coin. Nobody's losing money trading LBRY. At least
that's
not
the point.
The way that at least
that's
not the
way
point. The SEC is trying to make it out to seem.
People think the government is their protector, but they almost unilaterally go after the people that aren't hurting anybody. Library was not hurting anybody. They weren't making victims of anybody by selling a coin voluntarily to a few people or giving the coin out to people that watch videos on the internet. Meanwhile, you got this other guy, what was Sam Bankman?
Sam Bankman-Fried, who's meeting with the head of the SEC.
Just running off with millions and millions of dollars. It's a complete fraud. Yeah, it's a complete shit.
I mean, if you can watch this and not come to the conclusion that there are two completely separate orders of society at play here, you're not thinking. There are a group of people who are in control of all of the levers of power, who do whatever they want, however they want to do it. They all cover for each other. They all fluff each other in the media and just raise everything else to the ground. And it's no coincidence that both LBRY and BitChute are being simultaneously attacked, because those are the two biggest alt media platforms.
I hadn't heard about BitChute. What's happening with BitChute?
Well, they're having all of their funds seized. Every bank account that they have at this point has been frozen, and we're talking about millions of dollars that they need to run their business that is now all locked up. And has been for over a year now.
And that very specifically, that right there is why crypto is a threat to the government. Because if they can't seize your money, then you can exist in spite of them. That's why crypto is so important. It's volatile. It's dangerous. It's full of scams. There's a bunch of shady grifters involved in a lot of different cryptocurrency areas. Yeah. Yes, that's true. It sucks.
So what?
But you know what? But you know what is the ultimate enemy of government? Sorry, what did you say?
It is. Well, I said, caveat emptor, and expect the world to be full of angels. So, you have to do your due diligence. You have to cultivate some sort of skepticism to somebody selling you something. If somebody presents you with a bill of goods, don't just say, "Oh, this is great. Here, take my money." More often than not, you're gonna get wiped out.
Okay.
Or on the off chance that it was legit, the scammers are going to see that, and then they'll be the next per store.
So you move the company to Switzerland. Where do we go from there? What happened?
Well, we didn't have a whole lot of money in the tank by the time we got to Switzerland, and we were desperately trying to raise money. Switzerland was part of this reorganization to once again up the gates to investors. But literally on the day that we did that, Bitcoin collapses by 50%. That's right. So, the day we opened our ICO, because it's the day Bitcoin went from $6,500 to $3,000 back in December October or something, 2018, I think it was. And so all capital in the industry dried up. I mean, the ICO market, the amount of money that was going into ICOs throughout the course of 2018, month after month after month, was just going down and down and down and down and down and down. So we were in a race against time, and the regulators knew it. They just wanted that. They just wanted everything to run down to zero, and that was that. So eventually, we had to make the hard choice of shutting down the office, laying off, mostly, non-core developers, and would just reducing the company down to about 5 people, and trying to get some sort of minimum product out there, which was hard because of the sabotage, which we haven't gotten to yet. But
oh boy,
because of that, of course, we had to retrace all of our steps with the core code. And unfortunately, we just couldn't. And by, I think, April 2019, we had to let everybody go, close the doors, and that was the end of Equibit Group. And so the only thing left of Equibit is all of the Equibit code repositories on GitHub. Everything's there. There's a working coin release, it's a pretty nice coin. It's got a dark gravity wave difficulty adjustment, and it's got a logistics mining curve, which, rather than following the Bitcoin curve where it starts with 50 per block and then 25 and then halving every 4 years, when I looked at that, being a somewhat of an expert in commodities, I looked at that issuance curve or the generation curve, and I'm like, well, that doesn't look natural. A mine or an oil well produces it follows a bell curve. Mm-hmm. Starts out small, and then you tap more holes, or you dig more holes into the mine. More stuff comes out over time, and the production builds up day after day after day. You reach some sort of peak, and then it starts tapering off. And so we redesigned the mining reward curve to follow that exact same thing. So the Equibit coin would reach its peak block reward after 8 years. And then it would start coming back down again. And our hope there was that we would have greater diversity or more decentralized miners, because we gave ourselves 8 years basically to get the network to be really popular. And at that point, you see this coin come across your screen, Equibit, it's 8 years old. Oh, I missed the boat on mining it. Well, no, you didn't. The mining has only really just gotten exciting at that point.
Okay. So it still exists. And is the code there. Public? Is it public on GitHub?
Yeah, it's all public. Okay. Yeah, it's all public. The wallet is really the probably where most of the people would see the work done. The wallet is really we hired a really, really great design company to do that wallet, and it's gorgeous, it's functional, it's easy to use. Of course, it's made to use Equibit, but if anybody can use it, it's there. So enjoy.
So let's do like a long story short on the sabotage. So you had an employee that was like a foreign national or something. Can you give us like the 10,000 foot view on that?
Yeah. So our very first developer that we hired was a Russian guy by the name of Sergey, and mild-mannered guy, somewhat knowledgeable in crypto currencies, very knowledgeable in cryptography. He studied cryptography in university in I think he went to the University of Leningrad or something like that, and so he knew his stuff, and he had built us a really great core system that worked exactly to spec, and so unfortunately, CSIS got to him. And I think what they did was they found his lever, which was, of course, gaining a Canadian citizenship, because he did not want to go back to Russia. So I'm sure they brought him into the office and said, "Oh, wouldn't it be a shame if, somebody said something bad about you to the national, the people in charge of your naturalization process? Mm. If CSIS shows up and says, 'Hey, don't give this guy a citizenship,' at that point, there's no question. That's case closed. You're not a Canadian citizen. So they leverage this guy, and it's pretty obvious to me that they actually poached him, because what they did was they made him go back to Russia to divest a business interest that he had, some startup that he had created with a few of his buddies back in Russia that he still owned a stake in. And for whatever reason, they didn't want him to own that anymore prior to becoming a Canadian citizen. Now, that's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. But if CSIS is going to hire you and use you to spy on Russians, they of course don't want you to have a financial interest in Russia. So I'm quite sure that's what they did. And one of the other things they had him do was probably turn over the code that he had built for us. Because what we later discovered was that he had kept all of that code to himself and was pushing fake code into our repository. And this was before we testers, because again, tiny startup, not a lot of money at this time. But he was delivering a compiled application that worked, that had all of the functionality and did exactly what we needed it to do, how we wanted it done. So the real code that was out there somewhere, and he had kept it to himself. And so he goes on this trip to Russia.
Wait. So you're saying that like he had the working completed code and he would just give you the compiled APKs or something like that, and then the code he would check in was different code entirely that did nothing?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Because
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we built our QA team right around the time of his disappearance. Mm. And so he comes back as the QA team is starting to go through his code commits okay. and starting to realize, hey, there's something is off here. Like, your code does not reconcile to the actual compiled app that you're giving us. What gives? And within days of that, he quits the company and we're out our code. It's gone. And he just offs and disappears.
Wow, man.
So, yeah. So he completely screws over the company. And, I should also forget. So shortly after he comes back from Russia, he actually tells us, by the way, CSIS, they not so subtly threatened my naturalization process, or made me go to Russia to do all of this stuff. But hey, we're cool. Oh, and by the way, I'd like a promotion to the company's inner circle.
He said inner circle?
Literally, I want to be a part of the inner circle. And I'm like, and I look at him like, Sergey, this is an open source project, and you're writing the core code. You are the inner circle.
I've just never heard anyone call even the nefarious people that have inner circles. Pretty sure they don't call them their inner circles. I want access to the inner circle.
Yeah.
So what probably happened? So what probably happened is the government said, "Hey, you need to get inside the inner circle," and he just used their language.
Well, I think they wanted to know. I think who was funding us, because we had raised millions of dollars at this point.
Okay.
Both in a public pre-mine sale as a private sale, which at the time everybody was using an instrument called a SAFT, which is basically a convertible note. It's what most startups use when they're raising money. So he comes back, he tells the story, Ocean, and then 2 days after the ask, he quits, and takes the code with him or destroys the code. But he hands back his laptop, factory reset. There's nothing on it. So wow. We were a little peeved at that, or more than a little. But we had to press on. What could we do? Like just fold the company, and we all knew it could be done. So it was like, okay, well, fine. We just lost. We just redo what you did. What you did is not special. There are plenty of other people in the world can do what he did. And so we just got back to work, grinding away. But with between everything that happened with the market, with the sabotage, with the OSC, it was too much for the company to bear, and we ran out of resources, and that was that. And fortunately, we didn't blow up in a supernova like some of these ICOs do, leaving just a laundry list of creditors that are never going to get paid. So I think that's probably why you didn't see Equibit Group and Chris Horlacher plastered all over the news, which was probably exactly what they wanted, because that's what these assholes do. They take people and they set them up for a fall, and then plaster it all over the media to scare people away from crypto.
Yeah.
We've seen that happen again and again and again and again.
So, do you think you got off lucky? Like, if you had somehow kept going, I'm suspecting that they would have escalated up to the point of you floating ashore, like that other guy did. What do you think?
If let's say we managed to close the offering and raise the money, and I was in Switzerland, yeah, who knows? Maybe we would have been fine. Maybe, they would have sent the black helicopter to come get me. Who knows? But, they were certainly threatened by us in some way or another. But, I think the real goal was not just to destroy Equibit, but to destroy the people behind it. And in that, they spectacularly failed, because I sued them. And couldn't even show up to defend themselves after I sued them.
This is active and ongoing, right? Like this isn't a done deal.
Yes, this is happening right now. So
okay.
In 2020, I filed a suit against Sergey and Cesis. And in Canada, when you get served with a lawsuit, you have 20 days to file your defense.
Okay.
Sergey did not file a defense.
Okay.
And
is there like a summary judgment or something?
Yeah. It's called a default judgment. So he's noted in default, and then we go to a default judgment, and he has now been ordered to pay $1.7 million.
Wow. Okay. That's big time guilty. All right.
The other thing too is that now his story is now fact. The court has to consider it as fact because he did not dispute the story. Neither did Cesis. They did not dispute the story.
Wow. Okay.
So they did file something called a notice of intent to defend. So that gives you an extra 10 days to file your defense. So now you go from 20 days to 30 days.
How long ago was
30
this?
30 days went by. That was over a year ago.
Okay.
So they didn't file their defense within the 30 days that they had to. 9 more months go by, and then they finally show up with a 1-page defense, which I'm just calling it the Colonel Klink defense. I know nothing. I heard nothing. I saw nothing.
But it was too late, so it shouldn't have mattered, right?
It shouldn't have mattered, but in Canada, the government apparently does not have to abide by the rules of civil procedure.
What? No, the government can do it at once? Even if there's a law. Oh, who would have guessed? Oh, governments.
And I even brought that up right with my lawyers. I'm like, do I not have a right to a fair and speedy trial in this country? And they're like, yes.
They're
I asked them, so
yes.
Yes.
Wow.
So is Cesis not, or has not only has Cesis fucked with me, but now the government is depriving me of my rights in court. And they're like, yeah, that's just how it is.
That's just how it is. So is that the most recent update? The fight's sort of ongoing?
Yeah, well, at this point, I mean, CSIS is in the worst position they could possibly be in. Like, if this was boxing, they're in the corner, and I am just pounding the shit out of them because they're basically not. They're not even trying to defend themselves. Their pawn is a smear on the floor at this point, and they have no way. They have nothing to defend themselves with. So the next step is disclosure, which in the US is called discovery, which is where we will haul them into an office and start, the judge will start ordering them to produce information. We are anticipating them showing up with basically an empty file box because that's what they always do.
Okay.
Oops. Oh, look, see, we don't have anything. We have no knowledge of you. So clearly, we have no files on you. So clearly we weren't involved.
So I'm assuming the goal then is to, win the case against them, get a payday that you can then bankroll to revive the company. Is that the goal? Is that the plan, or what's your?
Not really. No, I'm past crypto now. I mean, I'll use crypto, but I don't want to industry. I will, after paying, litigation funding, lawyers, and, any other fees, what is left is going to be divided amongst all of the people who help fund the project.
Mm. Okay.
And that'll be our, final act as a company is to just deliver the settlement money, pro rata to everybody who participated in the project. So we're hoping at a minimum to get everybody's money back, but the lawsuit is $120 million, and I think the total investment in the company was $2.7 million. So
that'll be good.
You can make money. You can make money suing the government.
Sick 'em.
And
yeah. All right,
so
guys.
This is kind of Ross Ulbricht in reverse.
This is interesting.
Some absolute shit happened, but I'm not going to jail for 2 life sentences. I'm beating the government at their own game.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying for years to coordinate like an in-person interview with Ross. I'm not giving up yet. I think it'll happen one day, but we'll get it. Okay, so guys, if you have any questions for our guest, get them in now. Put a question in all caps so that I make sure and see it in the chat as it goes by. And while I'm giving you guys time to ask your questions, I have I guess basically I want to give you an opportunity to sort of pimp your upcoming main stage Anarchapulco talk. Are you going to be, are you going to be talking about this subject? Like give us any information about it?
Yeah. I'm going to be mostly talking about the story, the Equibit story, any new developments with the case, because things are another wave of things are about to happen now that we have that judgment against Sergey. There's actually another lawsuit.
I don't want to hear about it. I think I've already ruined enough of your talk on the show. So save some juice for the talk.
Yeah, I don't want to give it all away, but there's actually 2 lawsuits. So there was Sergey and CSIS, but then there was another group of people who I think were, some of them I think really knew what they were doing, and others I think were just pawns. But there was a group of people who went out online and just started posting a whole bunch of shit about Equibit, calling us scammers and frauds, and basically trying to create the narrative that was going to land me in front of a judge with securities fraud charges. But of course, that doesn't hold, obviously. And so I've rounded up all of those people now, but some of them are actually in hiding. But I don't want to get too deep into that. I'll save that for the talk at Anarchapulco. But there's some exciting stuff happening there too.
One does have to ask, what is actually going on behind the scenes with the Sam Bankman story? Like, do you think the government was involved in effing him, and what we're hearing is only the narrative like you just described that they started to put in place for you? You always have to question everything. Right?
I think SBF he's a patsy. He's the Mark Karpelis to Jed McCaleb. He's the guy. He was a complete idiot who was put in a place he didn't belong because the smart people didn't want to be the ones whose faces were going to be smeared all over the news. But they're obviously protecting him, because how do you have all these puff pieces about SBF, and literally any other crypto exchange owner in the same situation would just get dragged through the mud everywhere. So this is part of the plan. Everything you see going on with this case is part of the plan to basically discredit crypto and get as many people as possible begging the government to come in and take over the industry. You've got guys like, who's that asshole from Canada? The Dragon's Den guy.
Trudeau.
Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, him too. But Kevin O'Leary belongs in jail immediately. Like, this asshole has the temerity to go on and pimp this firm and brag about all the due diligence he's done and become a paid spokesperson for a guy that he has zero excuse to not know that he was a fraud. When you do due diligence, that means you go through the financial accounts of FTX. You see the note from Alameda, and you see the related party transaction, and you don't look into that. I mean, this guy's not an idiot, and even if he was just some idiot with a lot of money. Even idiots with a lot of money can hire smart people to do due diligence. And those people are not going to miss tens of millions or hundreds of millions of missing dollars that belong to customers that by law are supposed to be segregated. I mean, any exchange operator knows this. Customer funds are segregated. You do not commingle. Ever. It's just, I mean, that is just common sense. We don't even need a regulation for that.
Let's see. Great Wolf over in Odysee asks, how long did it take to notice that the produced binary didn't match up with what was in the repo? I think he said when the QA team started trying to put two and two together, right?
That was almost immediately. Within weeks after we started to QA the code, we started realizing, hey, this doesn't add up to the binary.
Okay. All right.
And then we asked them, hey, Sergey, where's your code? I quit, and I don't know where it went. Was literally the answer. That was literally the answer. Oh, well, I don't know. I don't know where it went.
Oh, man.
What do you mean? You don't know? You're a developer. You don't lose code.
That is the worst
you probably
possible.
You have shit on your computer at home that you made when you were 12. Don't tell me you lost code.
Facts. That's facts. I do. I actually do. Yeah. I have my first MP3 ever downloaded. All right, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's been worrisome hearing your story. I look forward to seeing you at the upcoming Anarchapulco event happening very soon. He will be speaking on the main stage. You guys should come check it out. If you want to buy tickets, you still have time. There are still a few left. It's limited numbers this year because it's a new venue. Use code Anarchast to get a discount on your tickets if you're going to join us there. It's like a little oasis resort in Bonneville, right? Have you been there before?
I have. The last Anarchapulco was at the Secret Garden. If the Garden of Eden existed, that's what it looks like.
Really? Oh man, I'm looking forward to it.
It's the most beautiful place on earth, man. You're gonna love it.
I need a vacation. I'm really looking forward to it. All right, guys. Thanks for coming on and having the chat with me. I really enjoyed it. You're welcome back anytime. I'd love to get updates, as things develop. Guys, thanks for hanging out in the chat, and it's been cool having you guys here, and we'll see you next time. Is there anything that you'd like to send people to? Anything you want people to check out of yours?
Well, yeah, just check out the link, read the full Equibit story I have posted in that Google Doc, and spread it around, because The mainstream media is completely suppressing the story. And what was shocking to me is that even a lot of people in the alternative media don't want to report on this. So far, you're only the third person in the alternative media that has brought me on to say anything about this. And I've reached out to a lot of alternative media outlets across Canada, and most of them never got back to me. None of the mainstream media reporters would even are even willing to talk to me now. Whereas, before they were like, "Oh, hey, Chris, any updates? Any updates? What you doing? Where are you going now? Where are you going to speak next?" And now it's just like, yeah, fuck that guy.
All right, that's weird. I just verified your link is in the description of this video on YouTube. I just posted it in the chat over on Odysee, so it'll be there hopefully to stay. Man, it was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Likewise.
All right, guys. Until next time, peace, love, and anarchy.